Yeah, so when the bank opens, I'm there with 2 cops, walking in with 2 cops. You imagine how does that feel? In somebody else's name. Today we're going to talk about a topic that Zach picked, which was multiple arrests and what it's like.
I don't think that's the topic I pick. I think that's the topic I've lived.
So what is it about? Are you going to talk about our different arrests, or just go into just funny arrests, or because I've got 3.
Were any of them funny? I mean,
no, none of them felt funny. Even looking back, they didn't feel funny.
No, at the time, no arrest is funny. But then, eventually you look back and you go, that was kind of funny. The police officer's reaction, kind of like, oh, yeah, whatever, dude, whatever.
Well, yeah, so you want to just go over that and go over the whole process? Or just
we can do that.
All right, well, you start. I'll follow your lead. Go ahead.
All right, so multiple arrests, of course, a lot of my life, let's say that, or at least my 30s. So one arrest happened to my wife and I did when we were partners in crime. We used to come down to Florida all the time, and what we do is we would book a hotel room for ourselves and kind of say, hey, this is Matt, and I want to pay for a hotel room for Zach and his wife. So I'd call the hotel, and the hotel said, yeah, we'll let you do that. Here's what you have to do. You have to fax us a copy of the front and back of your ID and the front and back of your credit card.
Right.
So once they did that, I'm so I get all these card numbers. All I got to do is get a fake ID, fax the front and back of that, and put a credit card on, what is it? What is that called? The program where people make driver's licenses and things. Photoshop. Photoshop, there. Thank you. Help me out. So go on Photoshop, create a credit card, MasterCard, Visa. So now I can book a hotel room with somebody else's credit card. They don't even know it. All I need is the number.
Right.
So I do the Photoshop thing and I fax it over to the hotel. So you do that, and generally what happens is, the reason I felt that was safe is because the hotel authorizes the card for the stay. So when you get there, they don't actually charge the card. They just do an authorization.
Right.
And then when you leave is when they charge the card.
By then you've already used the services,
yes,
so you're
and
gone.
Eating and everything. Right. So that's what I normally did. So we would come down to Florida and we'd stay at I think it was the Hilton on the Causeway, and we'd use somebody else's card. So we did that once, and then we'd do it again using somebody else's card. Then we'd do it again using somebody else's card. Because my wife really loved that hotel, so we'd stay there all the time. Get the same room, the staff knew us and everything. So after about the 5th trip...
This is the over cocky...
Yes.
Yeah.
On about the 5th trip, I guess they were waiting on us. So we booked the room, used somebody else's card, and went up to the room. So we went there, and the people greeted us like normal. So obviously they didn't tell the staff members downstairs.
Right.
The police kind of kept it to themselves. So we go up. So we're greeting the staff down there. We're hugging everybody like we normally do. We got you your same room and everything. So we go up to the room to check in. So we walk in the room, and there was always an adjoining room to the same room we stayed in. It was an adjoining room. So we walk in, and dude comes out of the adjoining room and just walks in. So I'm looking at him. I'm like this white guy, stocky. I said, hey, come on in. Don't let the fact that the door was closed slow you down from walking into our friggin' room. Who the hell do you think you are? Right? He doesn't say anything. He just keeps walking, right, until I grab him. And that's when he's like, hey, that's when they grab me and throw me up against the wall and announce that they're the police. We're the friggin' police. You've been down here stealing the services all the time. Yeah, they arrested us for that. That was the arrest. So they put me in cuffs. They handcuffed my wife, cut her off to another room to squeak a confession out of her, and handcuffed me and sat me on the bed. So they went through all of our luggage and stuff and hauled us down to the police station. The funny thing about that is they charged us for what we had on us, and they never charged us for any time that we stayed at the room.
So the cost of the rooms, they didn't charge you for?
They didn't charge us for the cost of the room or anything.
What did they charge for what you had on you?
Yes, we had like IDs, fake IDs.
Oh, okay.
And the stuff we were going to do, that's what they charged us for.
Because you were flying down to Florida to also, while you're down here hanging out, you're also committing fraud.
Of course.
That's your job.
Yeah. So the funny thing about that, right, is what my lawyer told me was it's like because they could never prove that you were neither one of y'all admitted that you were the one faxing the credit card and the ID down, so they could never prove that. So
it could have been anybody running that part of the scam.
Right.
Okay.
They just
like I wonder if they had grabbed you and it was just you and your wife and the IDs were valid and you didn't have anything on you. Like most likely they might have let you go.
As a matter of fact, that is what happened because I had been doing that for years, and so I did it for other people. So one of the couples that I did that for, like they called us up and the guy was telling me, all he kept saying was, I can't believe we didn't go to jail. He goes, there were so many police that came in that room and searched us and went through everything. And he goes, they just let us go. Like, okay, get out. Like, gladly.
You have to tell me twice.
That's right. No problem.
What's do you want me to do one?
Yeah.
Was that? So they did arrest you. So what happened? So you got arrested for back to your thing. They did arrest you. You went downtown. You got processed.
Oh yeah, we got processed. They went through all our stuff. So then they asked me questions. I'm a jerk. When they ask questions, I become a jerk. Because like they'll go, okay, what's your name? Right? I'll go, it depends. I'm a real jerk. So they like that detective when he asked me that, and I said depends. He just got up and walked off.
So what happened? Did you do time?
No, I got like 4 charges. I bonded out, and they ended up dropping them all. I think I only got one. Ended up with 1 charge, and that charge was while I was living in Florida. I rented something from Buddy Byright, right? And then ended up because I had to go on the run. I left Florida because I went on the run.
Right.
So I bought something from Buddy Byright, went on the run, and never paid him off. Well, now if you buy from a rental company, I didn't know that was a charge. They call it theft. Well, you stole it. Yeah, but we had a contract I didn't honor. Yeah, F that. You stole our shit.
Yeah, you would think it would be it would fall under like a civil, some kind of like a civil suit.
No,
or
they petitioned the legislation to charge people with that. That's an unbelievable feat that they've done. But yeah, they said I stole it. That was the only charge that I got convicted on that. On that arrest in that hotel.
Okay. So, all right. So one time I had, this is funny because like I wrote my book, right?
Right.
And this is a whole thing that happened during that whole process that I never talk about. Like I had an arrest I never mentioned in the book because the book's already like 90. It's like 100 and it's like over 100,000 words. It's a 330 page book, and it's like. It's just out. It's long because there was so much fraud, and there's other things that are happening. There's relationships and dating different girls and doing whatever. So, you have to kind of say what frauds do you want to focus on. So there's a little section that I like removed. Well, I was like, that's just more of the same. Don't even mention it. So I'm going to mention this fraud, and I've never actually talked about this fraud. I mean, this arrest, I've never really talked about it. You've heard it.
Okay.
I'm sure you've heard about it when we were locked up. Like I've told you this story, but nobody else's. I've never talked about it on Concrete or anything. So like Valuetainment, none of those shows I talked about it. Matter of fact, like American Greed, all those shows never covered this. So what happened was one time, and it's funny because I was anyway, there was this guy who was, I want to say his name was Walter Bean. That sounds familiar.
Does sound familiar.
Bro, that's how long ago and how much fraud there is.
That was the identity you were.
Yes.
Okay, well, no, I have heard the story.
Okay, I stole the guy. He was a drug dealer.
Right.
So I had a friend by the name of Johnny Moon whose father used to live with this guy and buy drugs from this guy, right? So, he was a drug addict. So one of his customers stayed on his couch a few times. So Johnny Moon was a friend of mine. He knew where this guy lived. And we drove by the house one day and he goes, hey, he said, you see that house right there? I said, yeah. He said, the name of that guy's Walter Bean. He actually, it's funny, he goes, he owns that house right there. He's a drug dealer. And he goes, in his nice house, it was worth whatever. Like, I'm going to say $200,000. I forget exactly what the amount of the house was, but it's worth a couple $100,000. I was like, it wasn't a great area.
Right.
But I was like, oh, nice. And so we were driving it, and I thought, huh. So he's a drug dealer. He's a drug dealer that owns that house. I said, does he own it free and clear? And he goes, I don't know. He might. I think so. He goes, I think his parents bought it for him. He goes, to be honest, he was like, his parents have money or something. My dad told me. I forget.
Right.
And I remember thinking, he goes, but he's been arrested a bunch of times. Like, that's all he does is sell drugs. And I thought, what a great victim. Like, if you have to rob somebody, if you have to cause somebody some problems and do something, like, do it to a criminal. Do it to somebody that they're not going to look that. We're not going to run around and try and solve your crime, Mr. Drug Dealer. Somebody encumbers the title to your home and caused you a bunch of problems and borrowed some mortgages. Like, we're not going out of our way for you. So what I
ironic you got arrested on that, but go ahead.
So that property, it's so funny because I went downtown, I searched the title, and there was no mortgage on it. It had been bought free and clear. So I look up the house. I look in public records, there is no mortgage. So I go and I know what it was. I created another identity. Or did I find his social security number? I don't know. Oh, I know what it was. I looked up his arrests.
Yes.
And I found his social security. He'd been arrested so many times over such a long period of time that if you actually went and you actually got their arrest record, it actually had his social security number like written on it or something. I forget. You know what, a lot of times, the Freedom of Information Act, listen to this. A lot of times they would actually take whiteout, the whiteout sticks, and they would white out so you white out, not just you can scratch it off. They would actually go, oh, here's this police report from 1995, and they take like a whiteout stick and they go right over your social security number, and then they mail it to you. And then I just there you go, 2770. So somehow or another, I want to say I got his social security number. It's so long ago I can't remember. Regardless, I came up with a credit profile for him. I think it wasn't great credit, whatever, but he did own a house worth $200,000. So then I applied for several mortgages in his name. I had a buddy of mine. This is how I get caught, by the way. I have a buddy of mine who was an appraiser. His name was Robert Toma.
Right.
Robert Toma then did an appraisal on the house. Never went in the house. Used pictures from other houses, put it together, and then I actually. Instead of using Robert Toma's appraiser, he doesn't want to be listed as the appraiser. I used the appraisal of another person, another appraiser. I'm going to fast forward because this is whatever. Right. The point is that I borrowed like 3 mortgages on this house, probably $150,000 on each mortgage, whatever, like $400,000. I went and opened up bank accounts in his name, and then I borrowed the money. Went to closings, got the money, put the money in the bank, and was removing money from the bank. While I was removing money from the bank, what ended up happening was one of those mortgage companies saw the appraisal, and one thing was off on the appraisal. It said, instead of it saying it was in an urban area, it said it was in a rural area. So they contacted the original appraiser to ask him if he could change that. And he said, I didn't do that appraisal. And guess what? He happened to be a retired sheriff's deputy. Well, retired sheriff's detective or investigator, whatever they call them. He contacted them, contacted their fraud department. They looked into the whole thing. They came back. They set up a sting. They followed me from one of the banks. They staked out the UPS store that at that time they were called mailboxes, etc.
Right.
Had a mailboxes, etc. I went to in the middle. You used to go to it like 11 o'clock at night. I drive there when it was closed. You had to have a key to get in. You open your box, you get your box. They were there staking it out. They follow me for a couple of days. They arrest me. Here's how they arrest me. By the way, they staked out my office too. So they were staking out my office, and I was getting a divorce, and I was thinking, that car's been over there a while. So I actually had one of my mortgage brokers actually said, I'm going to go find out who it is. He walked over to the car that was parked in the parking lot, watching it, like been there for days.
Right.
Different cars. But it was always like, you could tell it was like, that's a cop just sitting in the car.
Right.
He walked over one day, walks up to the window, and the guy's just staring at him. He rolls the window down, and he goes, excuse me. He said, "Man, you've been sitting here for days. What's going on?" The guy goes, "Why are you approaching me?" He goes, "I'm approaching you because you're in the parking lot." He was actually across the street from our parking lot.
Right.
He goes, "You've been sitting in the parking lot. We think you might be watching our place. What's going on?" And the guy goes, "Don't approach me again. Walk away. Go back to your office." Do you understand what I'm saying? He goes, "Hey, bro, what's going on?" The guy flashes a badge and he says, "Hey," he says, "none of your business what's going on. Go. And so the guy walks back. That guy was Dominic Ferreira. That was one of my brokers. So he walked over there. So we goes back, whatever. So I remember that. So a day or two later.
When Dominic brought that news to you, what did you do?
You know what I thought?
What?
I thought that they were staking out another one of the businesses, or I thought maybe it's like when Dominic said he flashed a badge. He's like an investigator. Dominic said he might be a private investigator.
Right.
Like maybe he's not a cop.
Right.
He didn't say, he said, "I didn't really see what the badge said." He said, "I just left." He seemed like serious. So we started thinking maybe my ex-wife or my soon-to-be ex-wife was having me followed. Because it was that kind of a divorce. It wasn't an amicable divorce.
Right.
So I was like, man. So I was like, okay, so I'm still not thinking I'm in trouble. I didn't feel like I was in trouble until one day I went to go check my box. And I was driving back in my car. I had an Audi TT Quattro when they had first come out. Loved that car. So I'm driving this little Audi, and I noticed, it was a buddy of mine was with me, and he said he noticed somebody was following me. Right. I actually got into a high-speed chase with the cops. But here's the funny thing. You know how I knew the cops were following me? We got on I-75 because I was checking. The box was in Brandon, which is like a 20-minute drive from Tampa. It's another city outside Tampa. And so my office was in Tampa. So I got on I-75, and as I'm driving down I-75, he's like, "I think that car back there is following us, bro. They've been here for this long. I saw them over here. I think that's a car." I was like, "Really?" So I pulled over and just stopped. The car pulled over and stopped.
Get out of here.
So now we've got
made
this.
it that obvious?
That obvious. Like, but they're just like, I'm like, oh my God. So I was like, oh my God, the other day, one of my brokers, there was somebody parked across the street. And I tell him, I'm like, the guy, they went out and then they checked and he said he was an investigator and he showed a badge. And of course, this guy sitting next to me is like, "What am I hanging out with you for? What's going on? You're an arch criminal. What are you doing?" I'm like, he's like, "Well, what happened?" I'm like, "Oh man. Okay, so there's this guy. I borrowed like 3 mortgages on his house. I've been taking the money out. He already knows I'm all corrupt." And he's like, "Fuck." I remember he goes, "How do you think of these things?" He's like, I was like, "Bro, I got bigger problems than breaking this down." "Well, how exactly did you?" "I got an issue. We're sitting on the side of the road yelling at each other." So I drive off. The car comes up behind me, keeps going, follows us. No problem. Now we realize like there's 2 cars. So then I try and lose him, right? At one point I think I lose him, and then we see another car. And we're like, okay, then I race around in the back. So I'm really racing around at this point. And then at one point I think I've lost both of them. But then when I go back to the office, I pull up in the office. One of them's like already at the office, and another one pulls up. And it's like, okay, they're doing some kind of chase you down thing that I don't know how to do, and doesn't matter anyway because they already know where I'm at. And one of those cars was the car that was across the street. Like, I'm done. So at the end of the day, I go to pick up my son. I jump in my car. I take off. I'm driving down these little back roads, driving around a little lake. Like, there are back roads, in Florida. Like, there's lots of little, you could have a major city, and then in between intersections, there's just these little tiny back roads that go around little ponds, and they're in the middle. And so I'm kind of driving fast and everything. And then I realize they're behind me. And then as I'm going, I'm like, oh shit, this guy's behind me. I'm going to pick up my son. I don't want this guy, like, I don't want to be this guy chasing me around with my son in the car. And I'm like, oh man, I remember looking at him and looking up, and this car pulls up in front of me. And then there's next thing I know, cop car. Sheriff. Like, boom, boom. I'm like, I lock up. I'm like, holy man, bro. There's like 3 or 4 cop cars. There's a couple undercover cars. They jump out. They pull their guns. They do the whole thing.
All on a mortgage.
All because of a couple of mortgages and an identity theft. So here's what I found out had happened. What had happened was this. When they found out the whole thing, they actually went to Walter Bean. I really want to say it is Bean.
Yeah, it was Bean.
So Walter, went to Walter Bean. They actually, because he's a drug dealer, they brought him downtown. They questioned him. They insisted it was him. They were ready to throw him in jail. He's screaming it's not him. He doesn't know anything about it. They search his house. They really put like this guy through hell. And they come back but they let him go because they were like, we couldn't find anything. And you have to understand this. This is the worst part. Colby, this is going to lose us some subscribers. So here's the worst part. Keep in mind, this guy's a scumbag, okay?
Oh, okay.
So he's a scumbag, so don't judge me on this. I don't want to hear any crap. Fuck you, okay? It was at a bad time. It was a bad time.
He was selling drugs to kids.
He's selling drugs to kids.
There you go.
And pregnant women. Hard drugs, like marijuana and ecstasy.
Right.
No, I'm just joking. I don't know what he was selling. Anyway, so my goal, you know what I was going to do?
What?
Oh, God, this is so bad, bro. Colby's laughing. So the appraisal's in his name. Everything's in his name.
So they think it's him all the way.
I just took his idea. Yeah, but luckily, luckily for him, the people that I'd gone to the closing with are all basically, when they're being shown a picture of him, they're like, that they can't ID him. That might be him, might not. I don't think so. I don't know. He was significantly older than me. At that point, I was in my early 30s. He was in his late.
He's a white guy?
Yeah, mid to late 50s though.
And so they're thinking that you are the guy that came to the closing? They're thinking he is the guy that came to the closing?
Initially, but nobody could ID him. But they're trying to ID him off of, you saw this guy a month ago, and in a little black and white picture that's been copied multiple times now. So it's like, it's not him. It could be him. He could be working with him. Like, they don't know.
Right.
He probably knows him. So he's involved in it. He's been in state prison 3 or 4 times. He's been arrested 15 times. I mean, he's involved. It's a scam. So I was literally, my whole plan when I had gotten all the money out, and I'd gotten out a couple $100,000. When I'd gotten out the whole thing, my plan had been to take the appraisal and mail it to him. Think about it. If you own a house and you get an appraisal in the mail that you ordered,
right,
on your house, everything was his name, and is it a full appraisal? You wouldn't throw it out. Like if you just got it from some random appraiser, right. They didn't even have to have a return address.
Right.
I just stick it in your mailbox. You're not going to throw it out.
So
you're going to keep it.
He would have kept that, and that would have raised the value of his property.
Raised the value? What are you talking about? When the cops had searched his house,
they found the appraisal.
Think about it. That's the appraisal.
You're putting a nail in his coffin.
Oh, it was worse than that. I had bought dummy cell phones. I was going to take the dummy cell phones, wipe them down, and I was going to leave them at his front door, like in a box. If you walked out your front door and you saw a cell phone, a brand new cell phone in a box, are you not going to pick it up and throw it in the garbage? You're going to take it inside. You're going to think somebody delivered this by accident. Right. I need to keep this. What if they come by? And keep in mind, he's a scumbag. He's most likely going to pull it out and fucking open it and try and use it or maybe sell it, whatever. He's going to keep it. Like, I was basically going to take a lot of this stuff and drop it off at his house. Most people are going to pick it up and bring it inside, so that I knew if he ever his house got searched, which I assumed it would be, they're going to find a lot of the stuff that he says he doesn't know anything about. You had the appraisal. You had like the laptop, all these I had a laptop I had bought specifically, and I'd written up all the documents on the laptop. So you've got a laptop in your house that has all the documents on it.
Right.
Everything's in your name. You've got the cell phones that were all used. And could you imagine him sitting there with the cell phone on him, and the cops are like, so you don't know anything about this? No, I don't. And they call the number, and he goes, oh, hold on a second, I got a call. Yes? I mean, they'd be like, yeah, what? Oh, why are you calling me? This is the number that was used. Oh, no. See, what happened was someone dropped this off at my front door. I've been using the phone. Sure you have. I mean, he would have been, look, the fake pay stubs that I had made were on the laptop that he had. So, I mean, he's going to have some splaining to do. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
It's going to be an issue.
Right.
For old Walter. And don't judge me, okay? I know you guys out there, you're judging me. You're saying, what a scumbag. Stop it, okay? This isn't a school teacher. Anyway, point is, what happened was I did get arrested prior to being able to.
So they arrested you that day that they followed you and through the back?
Yeah, it's actually still, it was like the day they tracked me. They arrested me. Okay. They grabbed me, they handcuffed me. I remember when they searched my car, at the time I had a concealed weapons permit. So they find a gun. But I have a concealed weapons permit. They find bullets. Like when they're like grabbing all this stuff and they're like, this is what cracked me up. When they're grabbing all this stuff, they're like, oh, weapon, boom, that's an extra this much. Oh, you got a bullet, you got bullets. Oh, that's an extra this much. And I want the concealed weapons permit. Bro, what are you talking about? Like, it's in my wallet. You know, I mean, they're like, oh, like, how did they, I always wondered about this. How did you do all this research into me, arrest me, and not know I didn't have a concealed weapons permit? Like, you would think that would come up. But anyway, that's the whole thing about the government. The left hand doesn't always know what the right hand's doing.
Well, true, but they didn't know really who you were.
Well, at that point, they had my car. They knew they had my tag. They're going to my office. They're going to a mortgage office.
Yeah.
Like, they know mortgages are
and
involved.
they just know you from going to the box.
They knew me from following me in my car. And I thought, had the appraisal had that one box had urban instead of rural on it, and they not had to call that appraiser,
you would have got away with that, Scott.
Oh, I would have gotten away. Because think about it. By the time I got the money out, I never go back to the box. So by the time 2 months later, when these loans start to foreclose, these lenders start to foreclose on this guy, and he goes to the police and says, look, this is what happened. I don't know what's going on. By that point, I'm never, the only things they had was they had a UPS box,
right,
mailboxes, etc. They've got like an abandoned address where I was also getting mail, but it was a house I had no association with. But it was a clean house. It was up for sale, or it's for rent that I would get cards to.
Uh-huh.
I'd even had stuff mailed to his house and drove by and opened the thing and grabbed it out of his box. Like, knew when it was coming, went and got it. So I've even got stuff being mailed to your house. I mean, and even if he had gone to them and said, hey, I'm being foreclosed on, I don't have anything to do with it. And they go, you mind if we look through your house? Sure, no problem. He's not smart enough to realize the appraisal that I got in the mail a month ago or 2 weeks ago or 2 months. He's not smart enough to know that. He's not smart enough to realize, hey, that laptop that I got, somebody left. He's not going to be thinking any of that.
Right.
My point is, he's going to basically, oh, yeah, you can look around. Sure. They're going to be like, oh, nice laptop. Yeah, thanks. I appreciate that. Like, he's not going to say, oh, I found it and I've been using it. He's a scumbag.
Yeah, he wouldn't even associate that.
Right. He doesn't know, but people don't know how the process works and they don't understand. He feels like I haven't done anything, so of course I'm going to be an open book.
Right.
Not realizing the law enforcement will take the path of least resistance. Right. We have enough to convict you. Does it look like it's possibly not you? Yeah, we think you could be set up, but no way a jury believes that. Arrest them. Like, they don't care.
Right.
We got, it's like grab somebody.
Right.
Round up the usual suspects.
Right.
Anyway, they took me down. When they arrest me, they put me in the back of the car. They take me downtown. They process me. That was the first time I'd ever been arrested. That was rough. Because first of all, I was cocky. I was kind of cocky at first.
Right.
But then you spend that first night in jail.
You had to spend the night?
Oh, I spent like 2 or 3. Keep in mind, there's like $200,000-$300,000 missing. So they're not saying, oh, there's $20,000. There's like $300,000, $400,000. There's like $400,000 in mortgages, right? There's like $150,000. There's like $450,000.
Wow.
And I was still draining the accounts, but I still had a couple $100,000. So there's a couple hundred.
They seized that.
Well, I had to tell them where it was. They did seize it, but I also had to tell them like where it was, because a lot of the money was like in cash. Like, I had some money in cash. Listen, they actually had brought me to, I had opened up a bank account and a safety deposit box. They brought me.
Yes, they know that stuff.
They brought me there.
To open it.
So when the bank opens, I'm there with 2 cops, walking in with 2 cops. You imagine, how does that feel? In somebody else's name. Like, this isn't even in my name.
So they did that.
Yes, they walked me in there. We go in, we sign it, we open the box. They open the box, they look, they're like, boom, there's all this cash in there. There's all kinds of stuff in there. They're like, oh, they took everything. Took everything.
So you bonded out. They arrested you. You bonded out.
Paid the money.
Whatever happened to that case?
I was placed on probation. I gave them all the money back, so I'm good. But the thing is, keep on, I was at that point, like, I needed to stop that case for a very specific reason. I was running additional scams. So I'm at that point, I borrowed money in the name. I was already borrowing the money in the name of Lee Black,
Green.
yeah, blue, green, yellow, silver. Like I'm already running another scam. You just happen to catch me on this scam.
On the beam.
Like what do you need me to do? Like I got to shut this down as quick as possible. And the whole time I'm lying to them. They're like, any other, nope, nothing. This is it. You got me. You got me, coppers. What do I need to do to get probation? So I get probation. And this is the thing too. Like I can't, there's not like I can cooperate. It was just me running the scam. Like the only involvement of anybody else was Johnny Moon, who didn't even know what's going on. I'm driving by, hey, look at that. And I thought, Rolodex, put that in my mental Rolodex. Look that guy up. Like, so Johnny Moon knew about a lot of the scams, but he wasn't involved in that scam, you know? So I'm the only person involved. So I paid him back immediately. And you pled guilty.
You didn't include that in the story, but I do remember that.
Yeah, I didn't include it because it's in and of itself it's irrelevant in the context. Like there's lots of little scams I was running. Like, do I talk about the one scam where I did this and I made $80,000? No, it's silly. Like that's 5 pages. That story I just told you just now, that's an extra 30 pages in a book. I'm already at 330 pages. It's not like I don't already have enough good stuff.
Right.
Like that's just stupid. That's that right there is a whole crime. That's a whole story in and of itself.
Right.
Instead, I already had tons of those stories. So plus I got arrested by the local cops. It was embarrassing. It's the local cops. It wasn't feds.
It wasn't anything spectacular.
Yeah, it's the locals, and it was embarrassing. I got arrested by the locals. I mean, come on, seriously? It's a little shame.
Understood.
I felt like I don't commit state crimes. It's embarrassing.
And I thought that's all I committed was state crimes.
No, you got no.
All right, so second arrest, another arrest that was funny. It happened in it happened in department store in Sears. Now, what we and my wife
already embarrassing.
It is. So we had bought a house up in Georgia, and we wanted a washing machine and a dryer. So what we had learned, my wife and I learned about.
Can't just buy it, can you?
No,
you just can't buy it.
And we had the money.
I know you do. I remember these conversations in Coleman where it's like where you've got $200,000-$400,000, and then you're still committing fraud for like a $300 this or a $400. It's like you had $400,000 in cash. Yeah. What are you doing? I know. I hate to pay for stuff. It's like makes me mad.
So what had happened was we had discovered what they call instant credit. Now we found this out in Target. So we get a fake ID. So we would pull someone's credit score. I think we had a contact that would give us people with close to 800 Beacon credit scores. So we would get a fake ID in their name, and we used to go into Target and like with a fake ID, and that person would say, "Hey, well, you want to apply for the Target card?" We were like, "Yeah." So they'd put in your social,
right,
and then they'd put in your date of birth and the address. And then if you got approved, they would print you out a receipt that you could use as your temporary card.
I remember you had a LexisNexis account, right?
Yes, we did. Well, that was for instant credit. In some cases, they would ask you questions. That was like Circuit City or Best Buy.
This one?
Well, this one was Sears. So, it was different. I'm just kind of explaining the instant credit. But sometimes it did require knowing the background. Like they'd ask you what color was the Jeep that you
drove in college.
Well, the Jeep that you currently drive, what color is it? Right. And that's,
I know they would ask you stuff like, what was the name of your roommate in 2000?
And LexisNexis joined all that information together.
Yeah.
So when we had the report, so we had the same report they had. So when that would happen, my wife, we used to put the little earbuds in, and my wife would be in your ear. So they'd ask the question and you'd repeat it. So you'd be on the phone and you say, okay, my name of my roommate that I lived with in college, let's see, my college years was 89. Yeah. And my wife would be like, oh, his name is Timothy Johnson. Yeah. Oh, that was Timothy Johnson. You know what I'm saying? So that's how she feeds you the info. And once you answer those questions, they go, well, you've been approved for $15,000. And so then you would be like Wheel of Fortune. I'll take the 70-inch television for $299. You got $6,749 left. I'll take the washer and dryer. You got $3,800. You know what I'm saying? That's how you'd pick items. And you're like, you want us to deliver it to your house? Absolutely not. I have a U-Haul outside. So happened.
Well, yeah, funny thing.
I rented a U-Haul this morning. Just load it up with the other electronics, please. But anyway, so we're in Sears. We want a washer and dryer. So we decide to do instant credit. So I put on an ID, which is crazy. I'm like 36, 37. I put on a guy that's 56. My age, like, well, I'm not that now, but my age now, you know. So I put on a 56-year-old guy, and I'm in my 30s. So the woman enters him in. So my wife and we're in Sears. I don't exactly know what happened, right? But we're in there lollygagging. So
lollygagging. That, let me tell you right now, Colby's never heard lollygagging.
Oh, well, we're in there screwing around.
That's a dated term.
It is dated. I'm old.
I use lollygag, or but
But we're screwing around. Like, first of all, like when I think about that, I remember because they had a outlet store, right, and it had a store in the mall, and my wife and I had a debate. I said, "Look, let's just go to the outlet store." She goes, "No. The mall has the same thing." I remember thinking, but why do you want to go to the mall? I think it's more money. So like
you're not paying for it.
I know, but
I still want to get a deal.
What? Absolutely. Well, listen, everything in me wanted to go to the outlet store. She wanted to go to the mall, right? And I said, I think the outlet store is cheaper. So she called and said, nope, the prices are the same. So she called the mall, and all of my objections she overcame. So we went to the mall. So we go into the mall.
So it's her fault.
Like, in my mind, I like to blame her because I'm like, I wanted to go to the outlet store. Anyway, but it's probably my fault anyway for agreeing. I could have said no. We're going to the outlet store.
You just don't want the phone call. You're trying to avoid the phone call right now.
Yes.
If only I'd listened to my wife.
I did. If I had.
Oh yeah.
All right. So we go to the mall. So we're in the mall. We give the woman the info. She types it in, and we get approved. So we pick out the washer and dryer. So I think we have like $5,000 worth of credit left. So she's like, "Did you guys want to get anything else?"
Do I?
Yeah, of course. So let's look around. All right. So at some point we're looking around. No, what it is we're asking them, like, can you bring the washer and dryer out? So it feels like they're stalling us. So the next person we talk to about our credit, like I told you, whenever I'm dealing with someone in the bank, I kind of look for mannerisms of being nervous.
Right.
Because if you're like in an active crime, and this is not what you're normally used to, you start getting nervous.
Right.
So the next person we dealt with appeared extremely nervous, right? So somehow my wife and I separated. She was looking at something, I was looking at something else. So the next woman I deal with, she looked extremely nervous. So I'm talking to her, and I'm trying to make conversation, and she's barely able to answer my questions. I said to myself, okay, it's time for us to go.
Right.
So I'm looking for my wife. I think this time we have cell phones, but I call her up, and when we meet up, both of us are like, hey, let's get out. Like I said, hey, let's get out of here. She goes, yeah, because da-da-da-da, acting crazy, da-da-da-da. So I'm like, okay, let's go. So we go to leave. We get out into the parking lot, right? Because they're calling us. Oh, hold on a second. We're going to get your washer and dryer. I said, we'll be right back. We had an emergency. We'll be right back. So we got out, get in our car. So we're walking fast, get in the car, close the door. I start the car, and as I'm pulling out of the driveway, I see the police cars coming into the only entrance into the parking lot. So when they come, they go past us. They're coming, like as I'm looking in the rearview mirror, they're coming out of the store. That's them right there. They're pointing to the police. So they're like, so they pull in and like, what? That's them. You passed them. So they turn around and we're pulling out of the parking lot. They start chasing us. Yes. They even tapped the rear end of our car. Yeah, to stop. That's how we stopped, and they arrested us at that point in time. It's kind of like 3 minutes, like a minute or two earlier. If we'd have got that panic,
you could have been gone.
We'd have been gone.
Yeah,
we'd have been gone. But the fact that, like, right on the cusp of that, we served 9 months in jail on that deal. Yeah.
Oh, Sears ain't playing around.
No, they were not playing around.
What'd you have to pay back? Restitution?
Well, we didn't get anything. We didn't. We just got approved.
Right.
But we unfortunately we had a couple of instant credit Target receipts on us. So by having that, we actually had charges in 2 counties. Yeah, it was. You're right. This is like one of those things where I should have used some common sense, but The reason I thought that was hilarious is because my intuition told me something was wrong, and I probably lingered about another 3 or 4 minutes because I was trying to be certain that something was wrong. When I was talking to that girl, I'm going like, I got a weird feeling.
Right.
Because I don't know if you've ever had that feeling of dread right before you get arrested. Like you're going, oh, I'm going to get arrested. Like something's really, really wrong. Right.
Well, I'm a big believer in intuition.
Right.
Only because most of the time, like when I've dated some chick and I've been cheating on her, and she's, like everything's right. Like I went to work, I did, like everything's set up, and you get back, and the girl looks at you, and she's like, "Where have you been?" I was here. I was this. Something's wrong, and you're thinking, "There's no way she knows that I left during work in the middle of the work and went and had sex with this chick in a hotel room and came back." Like there's no way. Like there's no, but she knows. Like she can feel it. And the truth is, I've been in the same situation where it's like I know my girlfriend's cheating on me. Like I can feel it. I know it. It's not jealousy because I'm not a jealous person. So when that hits me, I know it.
Right.
And it's just intuition. It's the same thing when you're locked up or about to get arrested, or you're doing something wrong and they're figuring it out, or they're looking at you. You're feeling like, I can feel something's wrong, that something's not right with the way you're looking at me, the way it's intuition. There's no real, it's just that, like you said, it's just that feeling. There's no way to put your finger on it. Like everything's going right.
Right. And I'm sensing it. I lingered too long because everything in me said, turn and go now. But I'm like, I want to check and be sure. So I start asking her questions. And as I'm asking her questions, like I became more and more and more certain. And I didn't need that extra time. Like really what I was doing was giving everything time to develop. Right. Whereas we would have got the hell out of there and been gone. Like as we're pulling out for the cops to be turning in and pass us. Like we should have been passing the cops up the street.
Right.
And got on the highway.
Yeah. Yeah. I can't tell you how many times I've talked to guys that were just like, knew something was wrong, something. But so what's the other? I mean, my other arrest is like
your major arrest when they surrounded you and he walks up to you and goes, "You're okay." The one that made national news.
Yeah.
News alert! Yeah. Matthew Cox has been arrested.
Yeah, that one was.
The look on your face, like.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I had another.
When I was mad on the toilet.
I had another arrest where I was never even arrested. It was the FBI just called me up, and this was because in the middle of this whole, I was running a scam, and this was what?
I want to hear the one about where you were actually cuffed and you talked your way out of the cuffs.
Oh yeah, but that wasn't. Yeah. But that's the one. Okay. Well, I don't know how much time we got. We're good. Okay. Because I was thinking about the time, like, I'll tell you real quick, one time I got arrested. I didn't even get arrested. It was just the FBI called me and said, like, somebody I had been dealing with got in trouble, told the police what I was doing, got me on tape, went and had lunch with them. In the middle of the conversation, I realized they were wired. Got up and I left, went back to my office. I put all this in the book. When I get back to my office, the FBI calls and says, "Hey, listen, need you to come in." I was like, "Yeah, okay." Like, even in the middle of the conversation with the two people, I was like, "Oh, wow." Like, I'm being recorded. Like, and I go, "Man, I hope you're getting something for this." And the chick actually says, "We don't have to go to jail." And I went, she goes, "Matt, we've got 2 kids." And I was like, I don't have a kid? And I was like, "Okay, all right, I understand." I said, "Tell the FBI not to come in my office, just to call me on the phone." And I got up and left. I leave, I get back to my office. They called on the phone. My secretary says, "Hey, there's an agent, Scott Gale, on the telephone." I'm like, "Oh shit." Pick up the phone. I'm like, and she's standing at the doorway, and I'm like, "Hey," and she's like, I'm like, "Oh," and I'm like, "Yeah, what's up?" And she's like, the guy's like, "Look, obviously you know why I'm calling." And he didn't even pretend like there was anything other than you just been caught on tape. And he asked for me to come in, and I called. I said, "Okay, I'll come in on Monday," and scheduled a time. And then said I called, got a lawyer. Talked to a few lawyers. They put it off. Like, hired this one lawyer. He for $75,000, $75,000 to plead guilty. So I end up talking. I never did talk to the police. I talked to him. He talked to the FBI. Like, I never actually debriefed to the FBI. They told him this. He asked me. I said this. They came back. I said, no, that's not true. That's not what happened. I borrowed this much money on this property, on this. And I pled guilty and got 3 years probation, which ran concurrent with the other 3 years that I was on for the state one.
Right.
So, there was no money loss. So that was like an arrest, but I never actually got arrested. So anyway, the other arrest that you're talking about was after I went on the run. So there could have been another arrest when they raided my office, but I actually had a friend of mine that was a sheriff's deputy who told me that they were coming to arrest me before they came to arrest me. So there was this huge investigation, and then it was handed to the FBI, and then he was mentioned during the investigation. So there was a task force, and one of the chicks on the task force, he actually used to date. Ooh. So she came to him and said, look, your buddy Cox, he's about to be arrested by the FBI. They mentioned you. Nobody knows that I know you, so I'm telling you, don't talk to him anymore. So he then comes to me immediately, like after I think we went to work that day. He came at the end of the day, he came to me and said, look, man, I just got off work. He's in a sheriff's outfit and everything. I just got off work. Here's what happened. Boom, boom, boom. They're coming to arrest you in a couple of days. I was like, holy shit. I took off on the run. They raided my office like a couple of days later. I wasn't there. I'm gone. Another thing that happened was, so then I was on the run for 3 years. I cover all this in my book, by the way, which is also on Audible. So anyway, I was on the run for 3 years, borrowed a bunch more money. And then at one point, I was living with this chick in Nashville. So I'm living with her, and we're messing around with this other chick who's coming over, and we're all having sex. And
right.
So she, at one point, the girl I was dating at the time, her name was Amanda. Amanda found out who I was. She knew I was on the run, but she didn't know my real name. And keep in mind, we're going all over the place. We're going to Italy. We're going to Greece. We're going to Croatia. We're going to Mexico. Like we've been all over the place on my fault, using my false passports,
right.
And she's using her real one. But she knows, like, she's like, this guy, he's got tons of money. He's committing fraud, but we're living great. So she's going with it. Well, at some point I realized that the Dateline, NBC, was going to do a 1 hour special on me, and I'd already been in a bunch of magazines. So I'm already kind of nervous, but I'm also thinking I'm okay.
Right.
So there was that. So then, but she ends up telling the chick that we're fucking on the side. She tells her who I really am, and that girl called the Secret Service and turned me in. And they raid. Well, they were waiting for me one day. I pull up at my house, and they just get on the ground, get on the ground. That was horrible.
That was the arrest for.
That was my final. That was the arrest that never got let back out.
Yes.
You're talking about the one where I got arrested in the
bank.
The bank,
and then they let you go.
Yeah, that arrest.
Well, you explained your way out of it.
Yeah, but they didn't arrest me as Matt Cox. They arrested me as Gary Sullivan.
That's right.
So I was at the bank. I had borrowed like $1.3 million on a couple houses in Columbus, South Carolina.
I remember this now. It's called
that happens,
Gary Sullivan.
That happens. I mean, right, Colby? You know what I'm saying? Like if you had a dime every time. So I was in the bank, and I used to go into the bank, and I would pull out money out of just various accounts. I probably had, I don't know how many I had, 8 or 10 accounts. So I would go in, and I'd say, like every couple of days, I'd go make a little circuit, and I'd go get like 3,000, 9,000, 7,000, 8,000 out of different bank accounts. And then I'd go and I'd drive back to Charlotte, North Carolina. That's where I was living. So it was like an hour and a half, 2 hour drive, maybe longer. Anyway, I'd gone in this one bank. It was a bank called Wachovia Bank.
Right.
Walked in, and I'd borrowed money from them. So I walked in. I said, "Hey," and I remember I walked up to the count. The chick at the counter was always very nice to me. Same thing. She looked at me, and I remember she looked nervous.
Terrified.
Yeah. And I was like, and she always, because I was coming in every other day asking for money. Now, I'm also depositing money. Like I deposit like a $50,000 cashier's check from one of the other banks. So my balance wasn't draining. It was going up and down. Up. Sometimes it would have $200,000. Sometimes it would have $4,000. Sometimes it would go up to 160. Then it would go up to 200. Then it would go down to, 80. So they don't really it's varying so much. They're not thinking he deposited $200,000 into this account and he's draining it.
Right.
Doesn't really look like it's being drained.
Right.
So I go in one day and I ask for, I forget what I asked for, 5,000, 3,000, I have no idea, but it was under 10. So I say, whatever, hey, I need $6,000. But if it was anything time I ever borrowed more than $3,000, she always had to call and get permission because it was a new account.
Right.
So she goes, but I looked at her and she looked funny because she used to always say, hey, how was your weekend? Or how was this? Or how was that? Nothing. She's like, okay, thank you. I said, hey, so how's it going? She goes, it's good. It's good. She walked in the back. I remember thinking, it's weird. She walked in the back, waiting. And all of a sudden somebody reaches over and grabs me by the wrist, pulls my wrist back. And somebody grabbed me by the other one. I'm like, what the? And I look over and there's two sheriff's deputies, massive guys. They handcuff me and turn me around, and they take me and I remember he said I wasn't arrested. He goes, you were not under arrest. You were being detained. I'm in handcuffs and you took me in the back room and I can't walk away. I don't care what you're calling it. I was just arrested.
It's an arrest.
So they said, we're waiting for an investigator to come down here. And I remember thinking, because the Secret Service was looking for me and the FBI was looking for me at that time. I remember thinking that it was the FBI for some reason was coming. Because he said like investigator or detective or something. Right. And I didn't know. At that time, I was a novice and I didn't really know the difference between those roles. Even though, like the FBI will call you an investigator. They'll call their guys because they do have FBI investigators.
Right.
And those investigators are people that have been deputized into the FBI who are actually local people.
Right.
So you could be a local narcotics officer and be deputized into the DEA, and they won't call you a DEA agent, they call them a DEA investigator.
Right.
And they're paid by the DEA.
Right. To help them with certain cases.
Right. So he said investigator, but at that I knew nothing. Right. Investigator was just no different than officer, agent, detective. They're all the same. Right. So I'm waiting for the FBI guy to walk in. This guy walks in later. He comes in and he walks in 5 minutes later. The police station was right up the street. He walks in and he says, hi, Mr. Sullivan. My name is, and he said, Mr. Sullivan. So when he said, the cops had been saying Mr. Sullivan, but I don't know if they're fucking with me or not. He walks in and says, Mr. Sullivan. And I'm thinking,
oh, okay.
These guys think my name is Gary Sullivan. I'm okay.
That's what you're thinking.
Yeah, I'm thinking this may be okay. And the guy says, "Hey, look, obviously the reason we detained you." I even asked. I said, "Well, so why am I under arrest?" He goes, "Well, you're not under arrest. You're just detained." And I remember showing my handcuffs, going, "Hey, you see my handcuffs?" I said, "I feel like I'm under arrest." And he goes, "Oh no, we can take those off." He goes, "Take those off him." And I thought, I just got out of the handcuffs. Not that I could run or anything. These guys are massive. These guys would chase me down in a second. So it'd be like two greyhounds chasing down like a little poodle. Like,
or a rabbit.
No, a rabbit could get away from a couple of greyhounds. So I'm built like a little tank. Like I can't. Like, I'm more like a chihuahua. I have tiny little legs, like a little chihuahua trying to outrun two greyhounds.
Right.
Like, these guys are a big guy. Like, they're way bigger than me. So I remember thinking, okay, I just got out of the handcuffs, and the guy goes, so the reason you've been detained is because he said apparently you've borrowed 3 mortgages on this house. And he named the house like on Holloway Drive or whatever the name. I forget the street. On this house, and I looked at him and I go, "Is that illegal?" Because he obviously one of the places I borrowed the money from was Wachovia. They know they got a mortgage on it,
right?
So I already know everything you know. And I go, "Is that illegal?" And the cop goes, I don't know. He said, "I'm still waiting for the district attorney to call me back." And when he said that, I remember specifically thinking, "I'm walking out of here. I'm walking out of here. I'm out of the handcuffs. He doesn't really know if I've committed a crime." Everything that Wachovia is, I'm already like, I end up, but here's the worst thing about that. The thing that had me the most anxious was that he said you have 3 mortgages on this property. I had like 6 mortgages on the property. So I didn't know which mortgages. Wachovia. So as I'm talking to him, somehow or another, I end up coaxing him into telling me who the other mortgage company or the other banks were.
Right.
And one was like SunTrust. One was Wachovia, SunTrust, and the other one was like a Fieldstone Mortgage. So he's like, why do you have? So he actually gets the head of Wachovia's fraud department on the line. And this guy's on the line with him, and we're arguing back and forth. And he's like, well, why do you have 3 mortgages? I'm like, I don't know. That's what the loan officer here told me to do. She said she could only give me so much money. She said she had a friend and I was like, I got a second mortgage with, what's the name of that company? And then he goes, the other 2 is one's SunTrust and one's, Fieldstone. I said, right. Second mortgage was Fieldstone because SunTrust did a whole bunch of home equity lines of credit at that time. Right. So I like SunTrust did. So I didn't say SunTrust. So it makes sense. Like,
and that HELOC, does that appear as a mortgage on the house?
It appears as a lien.
A lien, that's right. Okay.
So it's a HELOC, a lien, because it's like a big credit card.
Right.
It's not like it's fixed rate or anything. I mean, they do have the terms written down. It's like a mortgage document. So anyway, but the guy at Wachovia knows this is all bullshit, but the cop doesn't. And the guy at Wachovia is in like L.A. So I'm explaining. I got
one on the phone.
The guy on the phone is in like Los Angeles, and Wachovia in Los Angeles.
He's mad though.
He's furious. Okay. He knows this is a scam, and the cop's saying, "Well, now, wait a minute. We don't really know what happened here." And he's like, "It's fraud. That's what happened." I'm thrilled. It's only 3 mortgages. I'm not in handcuffs anymore. I haven't been arrested. He's already told me he doesn't know what's going on. And I start explaining, no, you don't understand. I came into Wachovia. Their loan officer told me. I told them I needed to borrow like $500,000. They said, I can't get that on a first mortgage, but I have a friend that can get you a second mortgage. I'll get you a first. I'll send you to my friend over at Fieldstone. She'll get you a second mortgage. Right. I said, okay. I went to the second mortgage, and she said, I'm sorry, our max loan amount is only this much. So I do have a friend that has a HELOC, so you can get a HELOC on the rest of it. And she she called her friend at SunTrust, and I filled out that paperwork. And so over the phone, I did that. And they all were calling each other, and they arranged it, and they explained to me how I had to do it, and I closed the loan. I mean, I don't know. I'm like, I don't know. Is that illegal? Like, I didn't do anything. Like, I called I went to the bank. The bank's the one that told me what to do.
Right.
And so he's like, that does make sense. The guy in Wachovia is screaming, that doesn't make sense. Our loan officer would never do anything illegal. And so, but you know what really got me to walk out of there was when he said, it's a scam. Look at his ID. I'd actually gotten a real ID from the DMV, South Carolina Department of Motor Vehicles, in the name of Gary Sullivan. So I actually have an ID in the name of Gary Sullivan. And so the guy in Wachovia says, so it's a real issued ID.
Right.
So the guy in Wachovia is telling him, the detective or the investigator, listen, he's running a scam. He's using a fake ID. The first 3 letters are like 000. Now, it just so happens that in South Carolina, their IDs start with 000. And he says to him, no, it's a real ID. Our IDs start with 000. And I lean in and I go, oh, come on, bro. Now I'm not Gary Sullivan? Come on, man. What are we doing here?
The nerve.
What are we doing? And he goes, I know, Gary. I know. So now even he's thinking, this guy
is off the hinges.
He doesn't know what he's talking about. I've handcuffed this guy. It sounds like the bank did something wrong. Like, why? I'm hassling this poor guy now. So he lets me follow him. Now the guy on Wachovia is yelling so loud. He ends up telling him, look, you need to lower your voice. I don't even know what I could charge this guy with. I'm going to bring him downtown. We're going to fill out a police report. I'm waiting for the district attorney to call me back to figure out what's going on, and I'll get back with you. And he hangs up. He lets me follow him back to the police station. I go to the police station, go inside, fill out the police report, and he lets me go. I get in the car, I drive to 2 more banks and pull out more money. I then go in a third bank, and when I go in the third bank, the people behind the cashier, like, they see me and they like rush for the phone. Like, these 2 women almost bang into the phone trying to get to it. And I remember thinking, I like stopped, and I'm like looking around, and I went, yeah, I don't want to talk to that detective again. Like by now, he could have talked to the district attorney or whatever. They may have put it together. So I turn around, I get in my car, and when I drove off, the woman runs out and looks at my tag number, which didn't matter because I found out later he already had it. So anyway, I jump on the interstate and I leave. I mean, listen, that story is actually a lot longer because the whole time this is happening, I've got this crazy chick that I was dating at the time who's on the run with me. She's screaming and get on the interstate. I mean, this woman was a fucking nightmare, bro. So I take off. Like the whole story is a little bit longer and everything, and I go over all of it in my book, Shark in the Housing Pool. Look, Colby, when I do that, like you gotta switch to me. Like, all right, Shark in the Housing Pool. Like you gotta buy that because I do the whole thing and it's on Audible. Yeah, bro. Like that's hilarious. Like that story.
That is. I remember that.
And then it hit the newspapers. Oh, bro, it hit the newspapers. Like when it hit the newspapers, like it was
that whole story.
The whole. Well, I mean, they basically are like, look, the locals actually. I think they actually say that they arrested me. And that I convinced them, I talked my way out of it. And the same thing when they did the story on American Greed, they talk about that. Like they're like, this guy literally talked his way out of being arrested, and they let him go. Like it was bad.
That's classic. Like, is that illegal? I don't know.
Well, oh God. Yeah, because I'm doing the whole golly gee whiz, officer. I would have never. Listen, at one point I said, when the guy from Wachovia,
you got 3 mortgages on one house. Is that illegal?
What?
That's not.
It's not illegal.
That's not.
But they were all first mortgages.
Oh, that's illegal.
That's illegal. Like I can't tell all the banks I don't have another mortgage.
Right.
And they were all first mortgages. But think about it. He doesn't know that. The guy from Wachovia knows it, but he doesn't have the paperwork or anything. And the cop doesn't have the paperwork. He doesn't know. Right. I'm saying it's a
he doesn't know enough of the specifics to be able to get you straightened out. Yes.
Right. So, yeah. So that was that was one of the things, and that was. Listen, there was a 2-week period of time after that arrest where it was absolute chaos. I mean, chaos. I'm packing my apartment up. I go to like Houston, Texas. I drop everything off. I get into a huge fight with my girlfriend. I then come back to go pick. I'm driving a U-Haul van, a U-Haul truck. I have to drive back across country to Charlotte to get my vehicle. Where now the U.S. Marshals are there. I almost get caught in a Starbucks there. On the way there, I call the FBI agent to try and figure out a way to to maybe turn myself in. Maybe I can get a year. I don't know. Maybe I can. If I turn myself in, they'll take that into consideration. Maybe I'll only get a year or 2. Man, I mean, just chaos, bro. Almost get caught in the Starbucks when I get back. I mean, it was just go to Nashville, start over from virtually with like $100,000, which sounds like a lot of money, but it's not when you're starting from scratch.
You're right.
It was just the anxiety. If I wasn't actively taking Xanax pills, I would have.
You'd had to start actively taking it.
Oh my God, it was bad. So, what else are we doing?
I have my final.
Nice.
My arrest on the airplane. So,
nice.
All right. So
give a little bit of a back. You got to give a little bit of why they're looking for you. Stop saying it makes it seem like they're just targeting you. You're a criminal.
I'm a career criminal. Yes.
But they're like you got to kind of just give a little bit of the kind of like what they were. Like they're looking for you because you're running scams, and they get onto you, and then they get onto your virtual secretary, right? Isn't it? You were buying stuff from people, and that's how they get to her. Weren't you buying social security numbers? One of the many things, and that's how they get to her.
Yes. Well, they. So I had a assistant, a secretary that helped me with paperwork and just managing things and dealing with different people. So what happened was we were up and moved. We had a place in Salt Lake City, Utah. We had just bought a house, heated floors in the bathroom. So that would have made our 3rd house and fully furnished. So we had it to where we could go to any one of our houses, no suitcases. So we didn't have, like if we went to our house in Tennessee, we could just show up and walk in. All we had to do was get perishables out of the refrigerator, get milk or bread or stuff. Other than that, it was fully loaded, ready to go. Baby furniture, baby swing. I mean, like almost identical with 2 cars. Each house with 2 cars. So we had a place in.
It's a rough life.
It was a rough life. It was hard. We had a ton of money, but all right. So we we're in Salt Lake City, and so I mean, I've been dealing with a girl in prison that told on me. So when she told, I guess she brought our information of what we did in Florida to the Florida FBI's attention.
Is that the first time the FBI got involved?
No, he was kind of looking for us anyway. That was an escaped arrest, which probably should have been a different tune, where we barely escaped being arrested one time. They were after us, and it was the FBI, because we were staying in one of the hotels there, and we paid with somebody else's charge card. No, we had paid with a woman's charge card that we had, right, that came on the FBI's radar. So what happened was, while we were in the hotel, we left out of the hotel for the day. We were out. I can't remember where we went. We went and did something for the entire day. We were gone for the entire day. So when we came back at like 7 p.m., like we left at 8 a.m. and came back at 7 p.m. So when we came back, the room key wouldn't work. So like, what the, and in the room we got our laptop and all our baby stuff. So our daughter is at with my mom, and so we're like, we can't even get in the friggin' room. What the heck's going on? So we go down to the front desk, or we call the front desk. We leave because I'm like, I don't know what. Let's call.
Right.
So we call, and they're something like there was a problem with the credit card. We couldn't charge the credit card. I'm like, oh, that's nothing. We'll give them another credit card. I'm like, you know what? Never mind that. Let's just pay this, get our stuff, and get out of here.
Right.
So we offer. This is an almost arrest. So we offer to pay. So they're telling us the bill is. I said, well, how much is the bill? We'll bring cash. He said it's $1,200. I said, okay, well, we'll get you $1,200. I think we've been there a night and a half or whatever. So we go and pull $1,200 cash, and so I pull her up front. I say, go in there and pay. Keep the phone on. Keep your phone on. In your ear. So she goes in and she pays, and I'm sitting there out front waiting, and then the sheriff pulls up. I'm like, get the F out of here. So I call her up, the wife, and I say, hey,
go.
The sheriff just pulled up. I think the plan was, because it's a front and a back.
Yeah.
So we had circled, and I told her, I'm going to let you in the front. If something happens, I'm going to pull around the back and get you. Or we had been there and noticed there was a front and a back. So I don't remember what the plan was, but when I saw the sheriff, I said, so I pull out. When the sheriff pulls up, he's confused. He's like, what? So I pull out, run around the back, and I tell her, come out of the back door. So she's at the counter, and this is what she tells me. She tells the guy, like, she gave him the $1,200, and he gave her a receipt. So she's like, okay, can you give me the key so I can get back in the room? So he's like, hold on a second. So he's got her holding on. So he's talking to her about something, and she goes, hold on one second, Gary, I got to take this call. So she's talking to me, and I tell her, I said, the sheriff just pulled out, leave. So she just turns around, and she just heads toward the back. Meanwhile, the sheriff is coming in the front door. She's coming out the back. So as I pull up, she gets in the car, closes the door. I see the sheriff running down the steps, and we pull out of there and go. So we pull out of the hotel, and we're going up the street, and 6 sheriff cars is woof, 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 woof. Yeah. It's unbelievable. All for a hotel bill. Once again, because we paid that hotel bill,
right,
we didn't get charged.
Nice.
That was the almost arrest. Then we went and stayed at another hotel. But anyway, the arrest, I got arrested getting off the airplane here in Tampa. So somebody told on me that I had committed a fraud here in Tampa. So they were looking for me in Tampa. We were living in Salt Lake, and we had made an agreement that we weren't going back to Tampa. It's like, look, under no circumstances did we go back to Tampa.
Right.
So we violated that agreement because we're going to get our daughter baptized. So we decided to go back, which was like
Colby's like, this is insane.
It's insane
this
because
is so far from Colby's life.
I know,
except for the baptism. He's like that's this whole thing. That's the only thing he's like.
Nice. And that's worth the arrest.
Nice.
That was worth the arrest. So
I do have something in something. I do have something in common with these two scumbags.
It's amazing to me because, like, I set the standard and then I just go against it. I'm saying to her, I'm telling my wife, if we go to Florida, we don't fly in, we'll just drive in, so we can't be detected, and we get a direct flight from Salt Lake City right into Tampa, which is where they're waiting for us.
Right.
So what happened is that morning, We were dealing with a girl in prison that I guess had told on us or had joined the investigation, and she told on our secretary. So like the girl in prison knew that I was collecting people's prisoners' information and using their identity. So she told our secretary, this is the most bizarre thing. She said, I have a girl in here, social security number. Let me give it to you. So she gives it to our secretary, the girl's social security number, right? And then the next morning, they kick in her door and say, hey, you have a social security number of another inmate in jail. That's what they take her to jail for. I'm saying to myself, like, how could you give me something, somebody's social, and then arrest me for having it? That doesn't even make sense.
Well, you know, what's even funnier now is like now, used to be if you just had their information, it was identity theft.
Right.
Now it's not.
No, it's not.
No, now it's like it never should have been. Like if you have someone's, it doesn't mean I was going to do something with it. Doesn't mean anything. I just have it in my possession. Somebody gave it to me. Somebody.
Right. Or wrote it down on something.
Wrote it down.
And I grab it, like you write it on yours on a piece of paper, and I grab the paper and I write something else. And then I have the paper, and you're like, hey, this is a social security number.
Right. Well, that's just
I didn't know that.
Like if I have 50 social security numbers, what if I'm only going to commit a crime with these 2 and I never do anything with the other ones? They're saying, no, all 50. You could have. What do you mean I could have? That's like going into the bank and slipping the cashier a note and getting $3,000, but you charge me with everything that's in the vault.
Yes.
Yeah, but you could have gone in the vault. Right. Yeah, but I didn't, and I didn't intend to.
You remember we and John Gordon used to argue about that, the intended loss?
Yeah.
Like, John goes like, you intended to get all that money.
Yeah.
You see? The bank has $50 billion. Well, you intended to get all of it. You know what I'm saying?
Ridiculous. So what happened then? So
all right, so
they arrest the secretary.
They arrest the secretary. That's who, because when my wife and I traveled, we traveled under different identities.
Which agent? What was his name? Lavender?
Lavender, yes. So I traveled under a separate identity than mine. So they wanted to know if we were coming to town. So if they told the flights coming in, they wouldn't see our names. So they had to know what our names was. So they arrested our secretary for possession of a person's social security number so that our secretary would give them the names that we flew in under.
Right.
So that next morning, we get up at 6 a.m. and a person we deal with called up and said that our secretary, her name was JoJo, had been arrested that night. And I'm like, what? That doesn't make sense. This woman never committed any crimes. All she ever did was book rental cars, book hotels. That's it. That's all she did was set appointments and book flights and trips.
Right.
So I'm like, how could she be arrested? So that was the day we were flying in. So we were on Salt Lake City time. So we were flying out at noon. No, we were flying out at 10 a.m. and arriving at like 5 or 6 p.m. Florida time.
Right.
Because they're like 3 hours back. So my wife we go into a full panic because they call us at like 5 in the morning. We go into a full panic. My wife tells me 50 times, I don't think we should go to Tampa. I don't think we should go to Tampa. I don't think we should go to Tampa. And I'm like, wait a minute, what are you talking about? JoJo, our secretary, is in Georgia. This is all happening in Georgia. We're going to Florida, it's a completely different state. Like, what could go wrong?
Yeah, I mean, the FBI is not a national.
Listen,
law
I have
enforcement
no
agency.
idea the FBI is looking for us.
You think what? It's local cops?
I think
you
it's local cops.
Do you not even know that it could be? Are you thinking it's definitely associated with you, or?
Well, I convinced myself that maybe she was doing something she didn't tell us she was doing to get arrested.
Right.
Because under no circumstances should she ever be arrested. Just because you're working for me booking flights and hotels and rental cars, like there's
Doesn't
no
mean that
reason
you've committed a crime or know that a crime is even being committed.
Right. For them to kick in the door and arrest you, that doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. So when we hear from her, she's like, they arrested me because I had somebody's social security number. And I'm thinking, like, that really got far-fetched because I'm like, that doesn't even make sense at all.
Yeah. Plus, it's so trivial too. It's a trivial. It's like that's a minor charge. Like
For them to kick in your door,
Right.
You know, everything seemed up in the air. But my wife was insistent that let's not go. She goes, think about it for one moment. This is the thing she said to me that I look back and go, oh my God, like if I could just go back to those moments in my life, how different everything would be. So she told me, she says, everybody knows that we're going to Tampa today.
Right.
Are you sure we should go? Absolutely positive. What could go wrong? Right? Then as we're boarding the plane, right, we're in the airport, she goes, I just want to say for the record, that if something happens, I absolutely did not want to take this trip. It's like everything about her whole being was like, I don't think we should go on this trip.
Right.
And I'm like, we're okay. You know what it was that I got?
That emboldened that you keep getting away with everything, so you become emboldened and taking more and more risks that don't seem more and more risky.
Right. You know when it was that I got the bad feeling that we shouldn't go? Is when we
put the handcuffs on?
Oh yeah, that was the second bad feeling. When we were putting our overhead baggage on and sitting down. Something overcame me, like some dread overcame me, and I'm like, oh my God. And I remember I'm looking around, and there's people getting on the plane, and I told my wife, I said, let's get off the plane. She goes, gladly. So we go to get up, and I said, never mind. I'm just overreacting.
It's that intuition.
Yes. The dread said, get off this plane now. And I said, never mind. So anyway, so we fly to Tampa, and when we land in Tampa, and they're letting people off the plane. So when we get off the plane, they grab me by both sides. They grab my wife. So when we come out of the doorway, you know how you got the tunnel?
Yeah.
So there's a door right there. So they grab my wife and take her. She goes first, and they grab her and take her out the door. They grab me, and they call me by my name. And I said, no, my name is Bob Evans. They're like, really? Yeah. They go, do you have any ID, Bob? I'm like, of course I have ID. So I show him the ID, and he looks at it, just smiles, puts it in his pocket. I'm like, nice. I know for a fact that you're Mr. Allen, let's go. So they take me off, and they question me. And of course I pissed the agent off, like royally. He's telling me like, I have this, I have that, I have this, I have this, so you might as well go ahead and confess. And I say to him, well, if you have all that, do you really need my confession? He goes, you want to make this easy or you want to make this hard? I said, I kind of want to make it somewhere in the middle. They're like, okay, you're a smart ass. So they leave. And I go to jail. And they let my wife go.
That was nice.
So I was arrested. You know what I was arrested for? Possession of the ID that I gave.
That you handed them. But that's the most obvious thing that they have on you. They have lots on you, but this is a very clear, there's 2 years.
Well, I'm arrested for that. And then I'm arrested for being on the phone call where my secretary got the Social Security number. So she gave my secretary the Social Security number. Then they called me three-way. So they arrested me for being on that one phone call. So I had a warrant in Georgia and I had a warrant in Florida. So, my wife bonded me out, but the next morning, the FBI, they put a hold on me. I couldn't get out before the hold got dropped. That was my most thrilling arrest. Which I look back at. Yes.
That's thrilling. I wouldn't describe it as thrilling. But yeah.
But it was in my heart of hearts, I know that absolutely should, like all the warning signs that she's screaming at me, like never got me to waver 1 minute. Right. I've been doing that all day.
Oh, I know. Sorry.
Right.
The coffee's wearing off. Yeah, bro. That's horrible. It's horrible. It's horrible getting in that back of that police car, being fingerprinted,
walking through the airport like.
Oh yeah, like you're Hannibal Lecter. People are Little kids are
fava beans.
People are pulling their kids towards them, and it's just like they're terrified, holding their purses.
Yes.
Relax.
Fraud, nothing but fraud.
Fraud's okay. God, then get to the police station or and they process you and they put you in that little room and they close that door.
I had no idea that moment was going to be 17 or 13. What was it? 14 years?
I don't know what it was for 12 and a half for me.
Well, it was
a little bit more than 12 and a half.
It was 13 for me. So that moment started a 13-year bid.
I remember
it's still going.
Yeah. Oh man, it's horrible. It's the worst. It's the worst. Yeah, that's it.
That's all I arrest.
That's not all your arrests.
No, but that's all my interesting.
No, but we don't have enough tape. We don't have enough
at?
gigabytes.
1 hour and 25 minutes.
Oh, we're good.
We're good.
Yeah.
Do you want to? Okay. Well, all right. So, hey, thanks for watching the video. And if you liked it, do me a favor and subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. Hit the like button. Subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell so you get notifications. Share the video and leave a comment for the algorithm. And that's it. See ya.